Donald Trump's former Secretary of State, rumored to be challenging him in 2024, has just dropped a memoir with an ironic, dishonest title and is being savaged for it on Twitter. All right, folks, it's time to talk about Mike Pompeo. It's a blast from the past, a name we probably all thought and hoped we'd forget. And for a time we did, because the world moved on past the Mike Pompeos. And yet, it's 2023, and the election cycle for the 2024 presidential election is rapidly approaching. So much like the opportunistic cockroach he is, he's skittering out of the shadows, getting back into the media spotlight. He's doing high-profile interviews. He's criticizing the Biden administration's foreign policy. He's even criticized Donald Trump in roundabout ways, right? Also hinting, right, at his presidential ambitions without coming out and announcing a formal bid. And then the big flagship element of his media presence now is that he's dropped a memoir called Never Give an Inch, which is, again, a hilariously dishonest and ironic title, and we'll dive into why, because it turns out Mike Pompeo's given more inches to America's enemies than Pornhub. So, let's hear it straight from the horse's mouth and from Maria Bartiromo from Fox News, who just blow smoke up his ass, but let's hear it straight from him, what he means by this title and what he's trying to convey.
Joining me right now on the threat China poses to global security is the former Secretary of State. He is Fox News contributor, Mike Pompeo. And Secretary, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks very much for being here.
Maria, thanks for having me on this morning. I appreciate it.
You are out with a new book titled Never Give an Inch, Fighting for the America I Love. And I love the title because that's exactly what you did as Secretary of State, not give an inch. What is the synopsis of this book? Why title it Never Give an Inch?
Goodness, Maria, you've not spoken a lot about all the challenges America faced from abroad. We've talked about how Ronald Reagan had it right with peace through strength. And the idea of never giving an inch is the central thesis of how you secure America, how you make our nation more prosperous, how you give the next generation this same set of opportunities. We talk about China. If you're afraid to enforce the rule set, if you continue to allow them to walk on the American economy, if you keep giving an inch in every space, Maria, they'll be inside the gates here in the United States. And frankly, that's what we face today. And for 4 years during my time as CIA Director and Secretary of State, I never gave an inch.
All right, so that's it, straight from Mike Pompeo. That's what he's trying to effect. He is trying to lean into the conservative strongman aesthetic of a guy who is unapologetic, who's no nonsense, who takes no prisoners, metaphorically or literally, and basically is just full steam ahead. He's trying to appropriate the qualities of Donald Trump that most conservatives and Republicans identify and say that they like about Trump, that he's some sort of, again, this unapologetic warrior. Now, those of us who pay attention know better and know that Donald Trump isn't a warrior. He's a crude, incompetent, thin-skinned narcissist, right? He doesn't have any of the real affectations of an intellectual or rhetorical warrior. He just has a lot of bluster, right? Mike Pompeo is trying to appropriate those qualities, but with, an extra coat of polish, right? An extra, with more credibility, with more competence, right? He's like, look, I can have the best qualities that you associate with Donald Trump, plus qualities that Donald Trump has never had, right? Like a triple-digit IQ. So that's what Mike Pompeo is clearly trying to do here. But he's also engaging in a lot of revisionist history. He's like, look, when I was Secretary of State, we never gave an inch to America's enemies. We were just mighty, the unyielding American military sword, the divine sword of God or whatever. But the truth is, if you actually scrutinize his record, that's not true. And here's a classic example. We're going to go back to the Taliban and the deal that Mike Pompeo made as Secretary of State on behalf of Donald Trump and the Trump administration with the Taliban. See, Afghanistan is often pitched, certainly by right-wing media and conservative figures, as Biden's folly, as President Biden's folly, because, of course, the pullout of Afghanistan occurred on President Biden's watch. He actually went through with the thing that Donald Trump swore for years he'd be able to do. Donald Trump promised for years when he was running for president, and then when he became president, I'll get us out of Afghanistan. Everybody wants us out of Afghanistan. I'll get us out. But he never did. But what Trump did do during his 4 years as president was make commitments to the Taliban to get out of Afghanistan. He just happened to set the timetable up in a way that it would fall on Biden's watch. So he wrote the check and then expected Biden to cash it. And Mike Pompeo was his primary agent as the Secretary of State. And one of the conditions for the Doha Agreement, as it was called, that the commitment that the Taliban and the United States made to one another for the United States to withdraw from Afghanistan, one of the many commitments that the United States made to the Taliban was to release or pressure the Afghan government to release 5,000 Taliban fighters. Okay? Sure sounds like giving inches right there, right? To America's enemy. And if you actually look at the text of the agreement, the Doha Agreement, again, that was negotiated by Mike Pompeo as Secretary of State on behalf of Donald Trump, it's in there. So up to 5,000 prisoners of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, which is not recognized by the United States as a state and is known as the Taliban. So the United States approved the release of up to 5,000 prisoners, Taliban fighters who were imprisoned, who were defeated and imprisoned by the Afghan National Army, the Afghan government at the time. And it was reported afterwards that that part of the deal went into effect. By August 2020, news reports said that the Afghan government, which was not a signatory of the Taliban-U.S. deal, so the United States and the Taliban cut the Afghan government out of the negotiations. The U.S. dealt directly with the Taliban on Mike Pompeo and Donald Trump's watch to get out of Afghanistan. That also sounds like giving an inch. But anyway, the Afghan government, under pressure from Mike Pompeo, Donald Trump, and the U.S. government, did indeed release 4,600 Taliban prisoners. Hey, we're going to give you 5,000 of your fighters, your terrorist fighters, back to you. Okay? Sure sounds like giving an inch. Sounds like giving many inches to America's enemies. Because those 5,000 fighters would then go back to the Taliban and help the Taliban conquer Afghanistan. Right? So the other interesting thing, though, just kind of as to set the table here, how Mike Pompeo and Donald Trump set this whole thing up for disaster, is you'll hear Mike Pompeo say, and he said it during the withdrawal from Afghanistan under President Biden's watch, he was trying to run interference for his role in this negotiation by saying, hey, wait. Listen, this wouldn't have happened if Donald Trump were president, if I were still Secretary of State. Sure, we negotiated the deal. Sure, we set up the conditions for it, but it would have been it would have been different if we'd have done it somehow. Because we had a conditions-based withdrawal. We, in our deal that we negotiated with the Taliban, we set conditions. They sure did. But let's hear what the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under Trump and Biden, so the highest-ranking military official in the Trump administration and in the Biden administration, who was also privy to the Doha deal when Trump and Pompeo negotiated with it. Let's hear what he has to say. He goes, there were 7 conditions in the Doha Agreement, according to Mark Milley, applicable to the Taliban, and 8 conditions applicable to the United States. While the Taliban did not attack U.S. forces, which was one of the 7 conditions that the U.S. imposed, like, hey guys, during this process, you can't attack us. Mark Milley says they didn't attack us, which was one of the conditions, but the Taliban failed to fully honor any other condition under the Doha Agreement. So Mike Pompeo negotiates an agreement with the Taliban, puts 7 conditions on them on behalf of Donald Trump. The Taliban only honors 1. The U.S. honors all 8. The U.S. honors every single commitment it makes to the Taliban, even as the Taliban gives the U.S. the finger on 6 out of 7 conditions. That sure sounds like Mike Pompeo, Donald Trump, and the Republican Party giving many inches, perhaps even a mile, to the Taliban. So Mike Pompeo's a liar. He's a dishonest hack. He's a hypocrite. And the only other thing I want to point out, in addition to this, because it's worth repeating, it's worth pointing out, is something else that Mike Pompeo did in the aftermath of the 2020 election, which was incredibly dangerous. It's just a short clip, and I'll play it for you here.
Is the State Department currently preparing to engage with the Biden transition team? And if not, at what point does a delay hamper a smooth transition or pose a risk to national security?
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration.
That was after the 2020 presidential election, when, as the votes were coming in, President Biden was in the lead, and Donald Trump prematurely declared victory, and Mike Pompeo backed him up there by joking, there will be a second transition, or there will be a transition into a second Trump administration. So already, Mike Pompeo and Donald Trump were signaling that they would not recognize the peaceful transfer of power from one executive to another. So that emphasizes how dangerous and unfit this man is for office. He is very unpopular with the Republican Party, according to polling, and certainly Republican voters. So it's highly unlikely that he would get the nomination in 2024 if he does run for president, let alone win the general election. But anyway, Mike Pompeo is somebody who should be mocked and derided, and he currently is on Twitter. So if you have a Twitter account, I would recommend that you join, and let's humiliate this guy off social media. Hey you! Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, and I hope that you did, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below. And if you absolutely hated the video, the best revenge for you is also to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. That'll teach me. If you want to share an opinion or share some feedback, go ahead and leave a comment, all right? 2023 is a year of change, hence the aggressive rebrand and commitment to new content. Inspired by my friends Luke Beasley and STV Philly, my personal goal for this channel is to hit 40,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So I'm hoping you'll do me a solid by spreading the word and the videos to potential fans and hate watchers alike. And in the meantime, we'll be pondering politics again with you very soon.